conversation. I'm your host, Greta Bayrami, and today I have the pleasure of being in New York City to speak with a Rootless member himself, Zachary Moore. Zachary is going to talk to us a little bit about his Rootless journey and how he came to be a successful marketing brand manager for the world of sports. Zachary, thank you so much for welcoming us into your home today. We're super excited to be here and get to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I'm going to break the ice. I'm going to just start, and I'm going to ask you one question, and whatever comes to mind, just tell us what it is. We're going to say rootless, and when we say rootless, does that resonate with something?
Yeah, for me, the word rootless, I think of it in a literal sense in terms of kind of like planting your roots in a certain location. And for me, it's being rootless is having the freedom to travel, to pursue a dream, that you're not cemented in one spot. And I think part of that is literal and financial, perhaps, with mortgages, car notes, children, things of that nature. And part of it is a mentality about being flexible and adaptable and being willing to move and relocate and pursue something that you're interested and passionate about.
Well, you're very rootless. I've gotten to know a little bit about it, and I can't wait for others to get to know your story as well. So can you bring us back to young Zachary? Tell us where your roots are from.
Yeah, so my roots are in Washington, D.C. Born there, raised there in the city until college, and that's kind of where the adventure started of traveling.
Okay, so what did you go to college for?
Marketing.
Marketing, okay. So how does somebody that goes to school for marketing, where most people probably expect that you have some sort of job in a marketing company, end up doing this incredibly cool job that's a lot more than marketing? Today, you are a marketing brand manager. You're working with some of the top sports brands. You're designing for them. You're project managing for them. Talk to us how you got into this job. I'm sure this didn't just happen overnight. Talk to us a little bit how you build to where you are today.
It certainly didn't happen overnight. I think there was a lot of internships. That's the nature of the sports industry. Trial and error, figuring out what I liked, what I didn't like, gaining experience, and networking and leaving a good impression during those experiences. So coming out of school, I landed my first job based on a previous internship someone I made a good impression with, and the timing of an opening worked out with when I was graduating. So I ended up moving down to North Carolina to work for a sports marketing agency right out of school.
Wow.
Which was a good entry into the industry.
Yeah, so here you are, young. I'm guessing you're like 21, 22. You're moving, you got your first job, you're working in sports. What's that feeling like? What were those days at work like, those early days?
It's very exciting. I mean, when you grow up passionate about a sport, such as soccer for me, and you are constantly researching products that brands are releasing and following teams that brands are sponsoring, and then you suddenly start to get to work with those brands and those properties and teams. It's kind of a dream fulfilled to some extent.
Explain to us like the daily life, just so people get a realistic picture, because although I'm sure there was a lot of work that you put in. Mm-hmm. What was your schedule like in those early days, starting out in sports and in sports marketing?
Mm-hmm. Maybe like an 8 to 6 routine, some days coming in a little bit earlier, some days staying a little bit later. The position I held was business development manager, so I worked closely with one of our partners at the agency on recruiting new business, so that was very exciting to be involved in conversations, be creating pitches for different partners. Obviously not all of them pan out, but it's just a good experience to start being in those rooms when conversations are had about how brands work with agencies and how brands work with teams and players and things of that nature.
Out of that first job came the next opportunity. Where was that?
Mm-hmm. So after that opportunity, I actually partnered up with someone I met through that agency who was looking to build an agency dedicated to cultivating soccer in the Black community and creating a space for people who are already interested in soccer to just come together.
Wow. So, and where are you today? What's the position you hold today?
There's been a few positions since then. It was a great opportunity. I learned a ton. This was someone who had had some successful projects, running things by himself, a business of one. I was kind of employee number 2. We were able to do some really exciting things together, create some good content, land a good partnership with a European team to promote them here in the U.S. but ultimately there's sacrifices you have to make in a startup environment. And
Can you talk to us about
Yeah.
that for a minute? What are those sacrifices, just so others listening might want you to highlight?
Certainly, I think going into a startup, not all startups are the same, and you have to weigh the financial compensation that you're getting and the benefits that you're getting in a job with the things that you're learning and the experience that you're gaining and the connections that you're making. And at that time, I weighed the experience and the networking and the skills more heavily than some of the compensation, and I just kind of was getting enough to get by, but I unfortunately had an accident playing soccer that required some surgery on my knee, and that kind of tipped the scales where I needed to then focus on myself and well-being, getting healthy, and paying for some medical bills.
And the compensation became an important factor in the everyday life.
And that's just kind of the grind of a startup and an agency. Sometimes your revenue isn't consistent, and you can go through lulls, and that affects you kind of on a personal level.
Yeah, and what are some of those highs when you can recall back to those days? What were some moments where you said, oh my God, I'm 23, 24, and I'm doing this. Like, I just met with these people, and they just like my pitch. Do you recall a specific memory from those times?
Absolutely, yeah. I think I was in DC while I was working remotely for this agency, this startup based in Oakland, California. And there was a moment when the founder was flying across the country to New York, and I was taking a drive from DC to New York in order to close our first major deal with a European club who was believing in what our vision was for them to come here and engage with soccer fans and grow their audience in the US with new, bold ideas.
Wow, very cool. So what do you think opened the doors to such a creative career? I mean, sitting here, I think there's a lot of people listening that find this very cool, and maybe many of them didn't know this was a possibility, especially for the degree that you went to school for. So what do you think were some creative pieces that were within you that were able to open doors to such an industry?
I think what I had to learn along the way that's got me to where I am is that every business has objectives, every business has needs. It's about being able to recognize what they are and help them achieve those objectives and being able to deliver value. So it took me a while to get to the point where I'm at, where I can start delivering that on my own independently outside of a different organization. But I've started there, and I'm looking to grow that. So for me personally, that happens to be design, production, strategy, and promotion of different soccer projects. So I've learned to sew, and I have my own equipment to put things together. I've learned how to dye clothing. I've learned how to work with different vendors to source materials, to customize jerseys. And that's all part of how I'm creating value for a brand or a partner in bringing a new idea to life.
What I'm hearing you say is that in order to really consider a career in such a space, you have to have some of these fundamentals that go beyond marketing, right? Where you are actually touching, feeling, designing, producing, launching content. I mean, it's a full package. I
think the creative service industry is pretty wide. Not everyone necessarily has to have all of those skills or any of those skills per se, because there's so many other things. There's graphic design, there's illustration, there's photography, videography, and there's on-camera talent. There's a lot of different things, but it's, again, finding that niche that makes you special that no one else can necessarily copy. And for me, it was kind of combining those things into a one-stop shop for different people and brands. But
that's very interesting. So talk to us about what you're doing today. What's your title within your own brand and the brand you represent today? And then we'll talk a little bit more about the process of what you do every single day.
So the company I work for is Founder Sport Group, and they are a B2B manufacturer of on-field and off-field sports apparel for clubs, teams, schools, and corporate businesses. And on a day-to-day basis, I help all of our partners across the country. We have north of 20,000 different accounts, and these will be local sporting goods stores, decorators, who buy our product, apply logos to it for their customers, screen print it, embroider it, and sell it on to a school. And my day-to-day focus is on making sure they have all of the assets they need digitally and tools to promote and sell our products.
And then you also do something else
Yeah,
on the
so
side.
on the
as
side,
well.
I guess you would label it creative director, because it's pretty all-encompassing. Being a team of one, it is a business, but it's also kind of like an art, in the sense that there's things that I create because I want to create them and they're not attached to a brand. And I want to put that idea out there as something that I've been thinking over and produced. And those things also then in turn kind of attract eyeballs for me to have conversations about what I can design for teams and brands.
Right. So somebody listening, they're sold, they want to do it. They want to join the soccer world. They want to go to an agency. They want to start. They have these great ideas. What would you say are those first steps? How would someone even enter this industry? Do you have a tip for them or a suggestion of, let's say they're straight out of school or they're looking for a career change? How would they jump into this world?
I would really say hone in on a skill. Being a Swiss Army knife and being well-rounded is certainly helpful at all times to be able to take on different responsibilities on a team, but a team is generally composed of people who have complementary skills and are specialized in a specific area. So I would say look at something specific that you know or want to know and grow that skill to a point where it becomes an asset to an organization that they would want to bring you in.
And is there good opportunities for internships within sports agencies?
Yeah, I think sports in general, they're always looking for interns, be that teams, agencies, brands. They can be highly competitive because it is an attractive industry with some of the benefits of attending games or attending events hosted by brands and teams. But they're always out there, and I think it's about understanding where those opportunities are, putting yourself out there, making yourself competitive with good experience on your resume. And it's kind of a catch-22 that you need internships to get internships. But I think for a lot of young people who are looking to crack in, sometimes, especially in this age of social media, you don't need to have an internship nowadays. You can have your own Instagram account, Twitter account, where you are showcasing your skills, and it's a platform that represents what you can do for a brand if you're consistent in building that out. It doesn't need to have the most followers, but if you have consistency over time, they can see your work.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that's, because that was going to be my next question, talking about resources. So one great resource is just as you said, your Instagram page. Any other resources that you'd recommend to somebody that's young, that's trying to do this on their own or trying to get their foot in the door? Any workshops, any partners, any networking events that you might recommend?
Absolutely. I think identifying what it is specifically that you want to learn or need to learn is key, and then being able to identify how you go about acquiring that skill follows. So for me, and sewing, for example, I knew that there were concepts I wanted to create that required sewing, and sending those pieces to a tailor to do it on my behalf was just too expensive because of the time that goes into it and what they're charging per hour or per project. So I needed to learn that skill myself in order to bring to life these ideas. So I went about Googling kind of sewing classes in my area and attended one. And I was the youngest person there by maybe 40 years. And I know it's a little uncomfortable being in that setting when I was struggling to do the most basic of things, not understanding how to use a sewing machine. But you learn enough from a class like that, or whatever class it may be that you're taking for the skill that you want to learn, to kind of get you going and kickstart you. And from there, I would say YouTube is honestly the biggest resource that people can leverage. It's a free education, so every time there was a skill along the way that I didn't know that I could see I needed to take that next step, it's a resource I could turn to and figure it out piece by piece until those skills became second nature and routine for me to apply to my work.
As I hear you speak, I'm wondering, so the unique selling proposition that you give to all your clients is that you're a one-stop shop. You have found a way to take not just one skill, but a few necessary skills and mend them together and present Zachary Moore
Yeah.
your services. And it's incredible of how you've gone along to do it. Can you talk to us a little bit about the schedule of your day? What does your day look like when you are working? If you can open up the eyes and let us see what is that process from the moment you might get at the client to the moment that you give them the deliverable of what they were expecting.
Yeah, I think referring to just time and how the day is structured or how much time I apply to it, I think the past 18 months have been a really unique time for anyone professionally, be it people who kept their jobs in their field and how they had to adapt within those, or people that lost jobs within a field. And for me, the sports industry was really, really hit hard during COVID when kids of all ages and adults were not playing sports. So no one was buying sports apparel, no one was buying sports products, and they kind of put a freeze on everything. And so I ended up on a furlough, which was one of the most difficult periods of my life, but also a blessing in disguise that I had this time away from work where I really could kind of hone in on my craft and my passion and dedicate myself full time to what I wanted to do to build out this portfolio so that when things returned back to some sense of normalcy, I was ready to engage people in conversations with a portfolio of what I could do for them and create different pitches.
But when you get into the design space, how many hours are you dedicating? Like how many hours would you say are tied up in a project from start to finish?
I think the initial ideation of a design can be anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15. It really depends on the design and how many components there are to it. Is it one jersey that's unique? Is it a series of multiple that are the same, different? I think that all factors in. Then there's actual production and prep for that, and that can be anywhere from 5 to 20 hours per jersey. It really depends. And then there's the marketing promotion of a piece, which is kind of on the shorter end of things, maybe 5 hours, in terms of just packaging everything neatly, being able to distribute it in a clean email that articulates what's the concept behind the design, if any promotion of fundraisers is part of it, those kinds of things in terms of the full project.
Yeah, I mean definitely it's definitely a full circle process.
Yeah, and so on top of a 40-hour work week, or 40-hour plus, it's squeezing in a couple hours every night, a few more on the weekend, or sometimes you might just be exhausted during the week and not be able to squeeze some hours in there, and then taking a Saturday and Sunday and working a full day on your own startup.
And with your company, sometimes when you're preparing those pitches and they don't go with it, how many hours sometimes have you spent on something only to have somebody say no thanks?
Yeah, you can exhaust a lot of time, and I think for a lot of people that can be discouraging, but being persistent, being able to overcome those obstacles and those rejections is essential to make it. And you never know when a no is a no or if it's just kind of a maybe. And one of my biggest successes so far resulted from a no. That last July, as I was just starting out, I proposed a project to someone and reached out, and we had 3 or 4 emails, and they ultimately passed on the project, and I didn't hear from them for 7 months, 6 months. And all of a sudden they hit me up with an email saying, hey, we'd love to work with you. Can we get on a call to discuss? And that's because, I took the time to do the work the right way, to really invest in that, and it kind of came back later on.
And how does somebody deal with those rejections at that time? Like, what would you say is a process that you have to keep telling yourself? What if I am a young person on the team and my pitches is just 3 no's back to back? How do you get out of that? How do you continue to make the next one without telling yourself that maybe this is not for me?
I think you need to be able to evaluate yourself honestly on the quality of your work and constantly strive to keep improving it. No one's work's ever perfect. There's always room for growth. So regardless of whether you're having successes or failures, I think it's essential to strive to get better. But also I think part of it's always your network of friends and family, whether they're encouraging you and supporting you, and taking a long-term perspective on it, because if you are in the creative service industry and you have a creative skill, I think artists are a good frame of reference for kind of success. The biggest artists in the world are generally not overnight successes. It takes
Absolutely.
days, weeks, months, years, decades for them to keep working at something to potentially see success and have that become a fruitful career, even monetarily, or just recognized. Some people never see their work recognized while they're living, and that's sad. No one wants to hear that, but
Yeah, that's true.
that doesn't mean because you're not recognized in any given moment that your work isn't valid or worth it. So it's just being consistent, being able to keep going and grow.
Yeah, and no, thank you so much for sharing that. We have a question next. Is just about how do you set up your business? There seems to be a lot of pros and cons to having be strictly online or in person or a combination of both, because it is a project that must be touched, felt. Like you said, you have to create content around it, lifestyle around it. What would be your recommendation to somebody that's creating pieces? How would they get these pieces out there for potential clients to take on or purchase or work with them on another piece? What would be your recommendation?
Yeah, for me personally, I've structured mine strictly online as a way just to manage overhead. And at this point in time, I don't physically have an abundance of product for people to walk in and buy because it's so customized and because it takes a lot of time. It has such a high price tag with the labor that's gone into it that it's more suited for brands for an all-encompassing project where those kind of higher ticket items can be purchased. But I think given that it's online, how you represent yourself visually is key for people to engage and have a sense of emotion about your product. So that's actually something I don't do myself. I don't do any of the photography, but I'm lucky to work with and collaborate with good friends and people I've met online who help bring those to life visually.
When you're working on the brands of others, what's that creative process to dive in? Because you're still a brand yourself, you're representing yourself, but at the same time, you're representing them. What's that process like when you're diving into somebody else's brand and you're trying to do what's best for them while still respecting yourself?
I think it really just boils down to the brand that you are building and what you want it to be, what that vision is that you have for it. If it is a traditional apparel brand where you have seasonal or releases or drops of different apparel and you are building your brand name, it's more so maybe a collaboration where it's kind of equal weight to both brands and you want to have some characteristics of your brand come through with some of theirs as well. For me personally, I prefer to take a backseat to others' brands and take a bit more of like a selfless approach to it and just focus myself in their brand and bringing something to life for their fans or their consumers. I think you still have to be cognizant of building your brand and your name. So for me, what that's looked like is a small tag on any jersey where it's not in your face that I've made it, but if you're looking closely, it has that mark that you know where it came from.
Wow, that's very cool. So I like how you said that you like to take a backseat and you're more in the background and you want to let your client really stand out and all the things that's dear to them, especially as you're making apparel, not only for them, but for their fans. That leads me to another question of mine is, do you engage with others in this industry sometimes, or do you prefer to just have it be your own space, or do you seek out other brand managers, other designers in this realm to really collaborate and exchange ideas. I'm curious about how it works in sports. I think some listening might be familiar how it works in fashion, but that might not necessarily be the way it works in sports. So tell us a little bit about sports agencies and sports brand management, how they collaborate with one another to exchange ideas.
Yeah, I think at times there can be a misconception that people might steal your ideas in a creative space or even in the sports space. But for me personally, I have a really good network of friends who also work in the industry that can be a sounding board, that if I'm working on an idea, I can present them some of the raw designs, mock-ups of what I'm looking to go for, and they'll provide me some honest feedback on things I might want to consider tinkering with or changing. And then above that, I think for anyone entering this, it's okay to be part of a team. You don't necessarily have to do everything yourself. And for me, part of that was realizing that photography was never going to be my strength. So I should partner with people who are also trying to make it in the industry, want to build a name for themselves, and collaborate and let them help me as I help them through these projects.
And let's say you're working, you're collaborating, you want to build a portfolio. What's the best way to go about that? Because maybe sometimes you don't have too many clients. Maybe the team you're working with, the company you're working is not giving you too many pitches to be a part of. How can somebody go about just building some portfolio so they can present even as a freelancer to future prospects?
Yeah, I think a lot of the good pitches that I've been able to present were started with me initiating the conversation. So I think that for anyone getting into the creative services or sports, a resource like LinkedIn is incredible, where you can reach out to people, start a conversation. Instagram is another one. A lot of people have their positions and titles in their bios, open accounts, are kind enough to accept invites, and just feel free to send someone a LinkedIn message or an Instagram DM. You never know what's going to come from it. When you see people's work and it's good work, let them know, leave a comment, and start building that relationship. And if the time is right, if you have an idea for them, sometimes they're willing to hear it if you have that initial connection, and that's worked well for me so far.
So you're saying if you see something, you don't really like it, you think you can make it better, you'll send them the idea, just throw it out there?
I wouldn't say I can do things better than other people who are already doing them, but I think for me personally, as it relates to soccer, a lot of teams are trapped in like the confined structure of their brand partnerships. So if a major sporting brand such as a Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, Puma sponsors a club or a youth club, depends on the specifics, but you have a home jersey, an away jersey, and a third jersey, and that's it. That's all they'll produce for you. So how do you get outside of that box? And that's where I like to kind of come in and help people.
No, and I meant that in a good way, because I'm thinking of how sometimes you might see something and you might send somebody a message saying, hey, this is what I think would look good. What do you think? And then people might say, well, send me a piece, like, have you ever done that before, where you're physically sending them a jersey of how you thought it should look? Whether they buy or not buy is completely, a separate question.
Yeah, I have engaged in sending free product to brands or influencers, people in media, but it's something I don't do heavily when it comes to a pitch, because these concepts are so labor intensive. To really dive in to create one is doing the project.
So you're saying maybe it's good, but it's also...
It depends. If you're an illustrator and you think that someone's social media account could really benefit from some of your creative, cool drawings, make a few for a team, send it to them, let them give you feedback, make one personally for their social media manager. It doesn't necessarily have to be for the brand, team, organization that he works for, but if it's about something he's passionate about, that's a way to showcase your skill to them. And when an opportunity arises, they may look back and think of you for that opportunity.
Very cool. Next question is tied to revenue. We just asked a revenue question to everybody, and this could be, what's an easy way to enter this market, would you say, to create revenue? What's something people should start doing at the very minimum just to get some traction?
I think to get started, you need to really determine what your business model is going to be. If you're a brand producing apparel, jerseys, shirts, those kinds of things, are you B2C, business to consumer, where anyone across the country can buy things and it's based on the number of units you can sell of a particular design, or not, depending on what the price tag is going to be. Obviously, if there's less of them, the price tag has to be much higher. If you're making a lot of them, the price tag can be lower. Or whether you're B2B and you sell a package, something that really helps their brand stand out in the marketplace, and the ROI isn't on what they can in turn sell to their fans, but maybe there's a cause or a charity that they are really invested in as a brand, and this will help them raise funds because their fans have never seen something like what you're creating, and they're going to want that, and they're willing to donate, or they're willing to provide information in the form of some type of questionnaire form that the brand is interested in gaining information on about their fans, and it just kind of creates that unique selling point for them. So I think with that, if you're B2C, you need a website that can handle e-commerce for you. You need to be able to put up product shots. If you're B2B, it's about being able to properly articulate your ideas. If you can hone in your pitch decks on your own, then you're set. If you need a little bit of help there, that's going to be your bread and butter. That's going to make your money or not. And then obviously being able to have some type of QuickBooks service, perhaps, that's going to handle invoicing for you as opposed to something that's doing e-commerce.
Yeah, absolutely. And would you say maybe designing for youth clubs is a good way to get started? Or would you say is it easier to get acceptance on?
Youth clubs are particularly difficult because...
Oh, okay, see? I was wrong. Let the record hold that I was wrong.
The quantity of pieces that they tend to need, given the landscape now, is in the several hundreds or thousands for any particular club. And the benefits that they get from working with a major retail partner are kind of immense in terms of product and discounts on the jerseys themselves. So there are a few key players that handle most of that industry. There are always going to be smaller clubs that need help, that want that personal relationship. They want to have someone they can connect with on the phone, in person, that they can reach out to in a bind, that isn't going to give them standard turn times of we only get things back in 2 or 3 weeks, ordered 2 and 3 months in advance. So there are other opportunities, but it's about being resourceful and finding those if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's switch gears a little bit, jumping back into you. What would you say you credit your mindset to? You've done a lot in a short period of time. It probably has been a lot of hours, not only in the 40-hour commitment, but also in the freelance work commitment. And then, as you said, the compensation in the first years wasn't so great. You had an injury, you had to take care of those medical bills. What kind of mindset are you, that's pushing you and driving you forward?
Yeah, the mentality that I have is simply, why not me, and I have a natural persistence and determination that if there's something I'm set on, I won't give up until I've achieved that. So I think it's a double-edged sword with social media, that you can see opportunities that other people are landing, and you can in turn visualize yourself getting there. So it's motivational, but if you have some roadblocks, some stumbles along the way, it can make it hit twice as hard. But I think that's where the kind of determination comes in, not to give up, that if you know you can do it, you should just keep persisting, and you never know when that break can come for you.
Yeah, why not me? I love that. Biggest mistake you'd warn others of? Anything you want to let them know whether it's personal in your journey, in your, in your network, or just in your career?
I would say the biggest mistake I've made, which I would advise people on, is properly sorting out your business and finances. So for me, this was an interest, which turned into a hobby, which turned into a skill, which gained some traction and started to pick up some revenue and projects along the way. And I probably didn't separate my personal finances and business finances early on enough in terms of opening a separate bank account with a different credit card that I use and managing my expenses and being able to track things in that manner.
Oh, so finances, very important. Keep it clear from day one. This is going to be a two-part question. One for the company that you work with and one for your own company is, what would you consider the greatest achievement in your company and then in your personal company in terms of projects that you've worked on?
For Founder Sport Group, the company I work for, I would say it is bringing to life some of our new baseball and football products with a lifestyle photo shoot. So I was able to work with a photographer, recruit some high school models who play on varsity and JV teams, get them out in a field, get them wearing our brand's product, get them hitting balls, catching footballs, fielding fly balls, that kind of thing. Something that just looks super natural and made our product really attractive and created some assets that we can put in our emails, catalogs, social media, distribute across our clients to really get them excited about our product and wanting to steer their customers in our direction. For me personally, with my startup, Participation Trophy Studio, I would say it's working with Black Players for Change in Major League Soccer for Black History Month. And I think as someone who's Black and as a soccer fan, growing up idolizing Major League Soccer and seeing what the players are doing at this moment in time, coming together, creating change, rallying around voting, access to soccer, different initiatives, it's just really impressive and proud to see. And being able to work with them was a dream come true.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your eyes light up when you talk about it, so I can see it, and I'm sure others will too. And Zachary, what's the future looking like for you? What are some goals that you've set for yourself? What can we expect to hear from you soon?
Yeah, I think the sports landscape and the soccer landscape has been really disrupted over the last 12, 16 months, and it's starting to finally heal. And what I'm really looking forward to is fans back in stadiums, businesses starting to kind of heal, and the opportunity next summer to have some of Europe's biggest clubs and the world's biggest players come to the US again for another summer tournament. And I think that's when there's a lot of opportunity to work with teams and educate them on the US landscape, on the US sports fan, what makes them different from someone who's followed the game since they were 5 in England or Italy or France or Spain, and the different things that are part of our culture here that they might not know residing in a foreign country on day to day.
Who have some of those big clubs been, if you don't mind asking? You piqued my interest.
I mean, I haven't worked with any, so I'm just saying the opportunity is coming. But
yeah.
There is the International Champions Cup, which is a major tournament that attracts the likes of Barcelona's and Real Madrid's and Chelsea's and Arsenal's, and you could name so many different teams, Manchester United's. But they have a 3 or 4 tour stop in any given summer. Sometimes they go to the US, sometimes they go to Asia, and if you're from Manchester, England, or if you're from Turin, Italy, how are you supposed to know the difference between San Francisco and Kansas City and Orlando?
Right.
So how do you maximize your time there? Who are the teams, players, brands, businesses that you interact with while you're there? How do you maximize your experience? And I think there's room for me to pitch teams on that, and we'll see if anything lands.
Yeah, no, we're excited for sure. And this last question is really your closing remarks. To anybody listening, let's say they're rootless, they align with our mission and purpose, and they look at and listen at your story, and it inspires them to maybe follow a similar journey and realize that why not me, as you said. What would be your message to those individuals?
It's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't get too high on anything for one given day. Don't get too low on anything. Just try and track your progress over time.
And why not me?
And why not me? Anyone can do it. I mean, if you have the determination, if you put the hours in, there's no reason why you can't gain a skill. And I think another big part of that would be focus on the skill. Don't chase the money, because if you look and try and see where you can find a quick dollar and what you need to do that, that can be fleeting. You can fall into some traps with some fads, but if you focus on developing a craft and you work on that over time and you're an expert at that craft, the money will always follow at a certain point.
It's amazing to sit here and listen to your story and listen to such a cool career choice that you've made to not only be in sports, but also work in brand management. And I'm sure you get to meet a lot of cool people and pitch a lot of great ideas. So Zachary, that's all the questions I have for you today, and I thank you so much for taking the time to answer them and gaining us a little perspective of what it means to be a marketing sports brand manager. Thank you so much. Thank you for this conversation. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to following Rootless as it grows and learning from other people on the platform. Thank you so much.